เรียนรู้ตลอดชีวิตฟังแล้วเหนื่อย
And when you say that it's something that you have to do, you feel exhausting already. But here's the thing, the two meanings between learning and education. Because, education, it actually means the process of receiving systematic curriculum. So pretty much you are the receiver. But learning, on the other hand, it means that it's the process of acquiring knowledge, acquiring through your own experiences. So it's something that you are being the active player of it.
How do we start today? Community featuring ครับ for this episode we're talking to a friend of mine อิมสวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีค่ะพี่บิ๊ก
เข้ารายการอย่างรวดเร็วมากเลย
But actually we've talked quite a few before we entering the show.
Of course. So on today's episode, the reason that I wanted to talk to you is because this word, the so-called very relevant and important word of the era, especially the COVID era, is the self-learning or lifelong learning. Obviously, the traditional education.They might have brought us here, but maybe they're not taking us to where we want to go in the future. So we have to just think outside the box and go outside of our home to get educated. วันนี้เราต้องพูดถึงเรื่องของการไม่พึ่งพาระบบการศึกษาในระบบอีกต่อไปแต่เราต้องหาวิธีในการเรียนรู้ด้วยตัวเอง Is that what you believe in also?
You know what? Lifelong learning. When I was in college, actually this word was like something that was very new and people say that a lot of people don't really get what it means, but right now you just say that it's the word of the era, it's the word of the century that a lot of people are talking about. Some people even call it cliche, like what exactly does this word even mean, but personally I feel like this word is actually a very human nature, like to really think about it. We really constantly learning by ourselves when we were young.Like I often look at my niece, my brother just got his 2-year-old daughter, and I look at her as my example for just about everything. And I look at her and see how she learns, and how she evolves almost every single day, and she changes every single day. Like if you don't see her for 2 weeks, and then you see her again, then she just changed, And it's amazing how she just.You can say that lifelong learning as well, like she just constantly changing and evolving. And I feel like that's the meaning of learning in itself. And it's not something that is being forced, but it's something that happens very natural. Yeah. So my niece is my example for that. So if you ask me if I believe in that, I would say that it's something very natural to the point that I don't even think about it, whether I believe in it or not. It's just a part of life, that but you learn every day.
Of course, but it could sound very exhausting because we always relate learning with school. And we don't want to be in school for the rest of our lives because that's too exhausting. I don't want to go through all the quizzes and all the tests and exams. Let's be done with that and just go and make money. ใช่ไหมคนก็จะรู้สึกว่าเรียนรู้ตลอดชีวิตฟังแล้วเหนื่อย But actually, that's the whole point though. It's not done in school only.And
when you say that it's something that you have to do, you feel exhausting already. But here's the thing, here's another community that I really like, the two meanings between learning and education. Because, you use the term learning, and when in Thai you said การศึกษา or education. Actually, these two words are quite different in its own meanings. Like in Thai, we often treat these words, education and learning as something.Like
synonymous.
They are like they're almost like synonyms for each other. But people in education sector they know that education it actually means the process of receiving systematic curriculum. So curriculum is something that is provided and developed by other people that is being planned, and it's being handed over to you, and then you receive it. So pretty much you are the receiver. You are the passive player of
นั่งจด lecture ไปเรื่อยๆ
นั่งจด lecture ใช่คือคุณเป็นคนรับอย่างเดียวอย่างเงี้ยค่ะ But learning on the other hand it means that it's the process of acquiring knowledge, and acquiring through your own experiences and through your own internalization as well. So it's something that you are being the active player of it, So learning is something that you can generate by yourself. That's something that you can extract from yourself, something that you can experience and then you discover that oh this is my knowledge, this is something that I have learned. So it's totally the opposite.
Much more fun role to play, I would say.
Yeah, I
Right.
would, you know that whatever that you do in life, if you do out of your own will, out of your own volunteer, you know, then you feel like this is fun, this is your own choice. You are
Exactly.
not being forced to do so. But if something is being forced on you, then you're like, okay, I'm done with it. And you know what? Sorry, I talk so long, but
No problem.
anyway, when I was doing the thesis on lifelong learning in Singapore, and I was talking to my friend about this topic, and then you know Singapore was very famous for being the leading of lifelong learning in Southeast Asia and such. But my friend who is Singaporean, she said that you know what, I feel like this word is being forced on us. It feels like humans are being the human capital, like you know we are the engine for economic development and such, and it's like something that you have to do in order for the state to survive.
Right.
Because we are saying that lifelong learning is something that we have to enforce people. Otherwise, we would not be able to catch up with the skills needed in the 21st century.
Exactly.
You know? So it's like
And like that is so much on our shoulders, and
Yeah.
what an obligations.
yeah.
But we don't see ourselves in any of these. So this is like we have to do this in order to
Survive, to make the
yeah.
state survive.
Right.
Not for our joy and our fun.
Right.
And sorry,
But
I live for fun.
yeah, exactly. We can approach that from our own angle. We want to learn about this because it's fun, because it's useful for me. We don't even have to think about you know the company that ทำเพื่อชาติต่างๆ I'm doing this for myself because it's fun. Like you just said, you read for fun.
I live for fun. But you know what? When you say that you don't hum for child, you don't hum for anyone, you know. Effortlessly, somehow it contributes to something that is bigger than your own. But on the other hand, if something is being forced on you, then you stop doing it, and then nothing come out of it. You know, so this is the interesting point. Like when
Right.
you don't force someone, then it just happens. But when you force anyone, then the action just stops.
Yeah. So ประเด็นที่หนึ่งเลยสำคัญมากเท่าที่ฟังจากอิมก็คือ lifelong learning หรือว่า self learning หรืออะไรก็ตามทีเนี่ย it has to come from your own point of view or your own need or desire to get better, to have more in life, and then automatically it would contribute to the nation as a whole.
Yeah, as a byproduct, you know. And I
Right.
feel like this is not just a lifelong learning. I personally believe in human view and human nature, that we are capable of thinking on our own, of choosing our own choice and action or whatever. Like, okay, we can talk so much about free will, whether or not this exists, or
Right.
whether or not we really have free will, but that's another topic.
Yeah.
You know, but the bottom line is that we are capable of thinking. And I feel like this is something that differentiate us from other
Right.
species.
Right.
Yeah.
เหมือนกับถ้าสมมติเกิดเราเชื่อว่า we can design our own life and we can design our own like curriculum, what we choose to educate ourselves with, or you know the path that might not be very conventional or you know systematic. We can do that, and that could be the new phase of the future education. I think so. Yeah.
I really believe so, because I feel like the systematic education cannot really catch up with what we need
Right.
in the future
It
anymore.
moves too
It's
slowly.
too long. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It takes like 2 or 3, if not 4 or 5 years to develop, you know.
Yeah.
And by 4
Or
or
even a
5 years, that
decade.
content is already expiring.
Actually, I've been talking to a lot of university professors or teachers, and this is their biggest pain. They can't like keep up with how the world like
It's changing.
spins and
Yes.
changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it comes with the question, you know, like teachers are not the providers of content anymore. So as we heard before that, you know, teachers become facilitators of learning.
Right.
You know, so the process of learning change as well. So it's not just the content, because for content we can learn anywhere. You know, you can just look up for Google and then get whatever answer that you seek in
Absolutely,
life.
yeah.
Or you can search for it in the books, you know.
Yeah.
To get back to our topics.
ใช่ใช่ใช่ ซึ่งมันเป็นสิ่งที่ด้วยความที่ we are so liberated and free to design our own way of learning, and actually that's the hard part มันเป็นดาบสองคมนะด้วยความที่เราอิสระมากในการที่เราจะดีไซน์ออกแบบการเรียนรู้ของเราเองไงก็ได้แต่ด้วยความที่มันอิสระเยอะมากครับอิม so where do we start and where are we headed เราไม่รู้ว่าเราจะต้องไปยังไงเพราะว่า well one of the good thing of the conventional education is that they kind of plot the path for us to follow so you don't have to take care of yourself in terms of planning your own like path เหมือนกับเราเลือกแผนแล้วโอเคสายวิทย์สายศิลป์แล้วก็มุ่งไปเลยต้องเรียนอะไรบ้างเขาก็ดีไซน์มาแล้วนั่นคือข้อดีของหลักสูตร but that doesn't serve like the new way of the world anymore so you have to be the one who be in charge of plotting your own or charting your own journey right
but by saying this I don't mean that I go against not conventional but systematic education entirely I mean that you really have to rethink what systematic education really means or what it should cover I personally wish that the systematic education should provide what we really need to know in life there are so many skills that I was like why do I have to wait until I am 30 something until I learn about this topic let's say like financial literacy or
exactly.
relationship management
เป็นเรื่องที่โรงเรียนไม่สอนเนอะ
yes that is so crucial in
เหมือนกับ
life
คิดว่ามันยังไม่ถึงเวลาเด็กๆยังไม่ถึงเวลาในการจัดการเรื่องการเงินหนูจะไปเรียนเรื่องการลงทุนเหรอลูกเฮ้ยเด็กสมัยนี้แบบ they're so young and they are talking crypto already and I'm still clueless and if I feel like I'm lost crypto okay just we want to learn as young as we can about all the topics
so I feel like this is something that systematic education can plug in to provide us what really is crucial in life but for our own choice of learning then depends on you like if you want to learn photography or if you want to learn storytelling if you want to learn how to do documentary then go for it but for the very basic skills that you have to learn that you have to acquire I feel like this is something that it should be provided by the systematic education for everyone to be able to catch up on an equal pace because otherwise it's like it depends on each individual whether or not they can have access to courses of literacy skills or such skills so it should not depend on just an individual will or need to acquire for those crucial skill
also it's all about modernization I think มันเหมือนกับเมื่อไม่นานมานี้เพิ่งจะมีข่าวว่ามีโรงเรียนแห่งหนึ่งนะครับออกมาพูดถึงหลักสูตรที่เปลี่ยนไปเช่นตัวอย่างคือวิชาลูกเสือเนตรนารีมันอาจจะไม่ได้ feel relevant กับสมัยนี้แล้วแต่ว่าเขาก็พลิกนิดนึงไม่ใช่ว่าสิ่งเหล่านี้แบบ entirely useless but you need to find some new and fresh angle to each and everything ก็เปลี่ยนมาเป็นบอกว่าการเอาตัวรอดสมมติว่ามีไฟไหม้ทำอย่างไร which is super practical and is something that we should like teach people
because
to
we never
do.
know if we will end up in that situation
ใช่สมมติว่ามี fire drill มีการซ้อมหนีไฟซ้อมอะไรเงี้ยมันก็คือการแบบต้องเดินลงบันไดมาแล้วก็มาแบบมันน่าเบื่อ so just make it fun modernize it
oh actually you know what I personally like ลูกเสือเนตรนารี
really
because I used to be in a Girl Scout camp before but it depends on how you interpret it but when I was in how do you say ประถมป .4 in grade
like
4 right
elementary right
yeah in elementary school and then they would just tell you to go march for how many hours I don't know but later on when I was in a Girl Scout camp I realized that what they thought was actually diversity and to how to work in a group how to work with team
right
like collaboration skill and that is very important but what we teach is like you just go march and the students even though we were young back then you were like this is such a waste of my time
เงื่อนที่รอดต่างๆหรือว่าการบอกว่าปั่นไฟหรืออะไรประมาณเนี้ย
and I failedทำเงื่อน
see because you feel like you could be a failure at something because you don't get like the real essence
I don't get the point of doing it
exactly that is what education is all about I think you kind of have to teach and find the way for them to get why this is important and how they can like incorporate all this knowledge in their real life.
Start with why.
Start
That's
with
the title of the
why.
book.
Start with why.
Yeah, but that's very important. Like the teacher themselves and also the students, if the teachers don't really provide you with the answers, like why you have to take this class, then you have to ask yourself, like, why is this class important? You know, if it has any importance.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Coming back to, we could talk about this for like days, right? Because there are a
Thank
lot
you
of
for getting me back on track.
yeah, there are a lot of parties involved มันมีทั้งเรามีทั้งโรงเรียนมีทั้งคุณพ่อคุณแม่คุณครูงบประมาณของชาติกระทรวงศึกษาธิการ we can go on and on แต่ว่าถ้าสมมติเกิดเรายังไม่ต้องพูดถึงปัจจัยภายนอกที่อาจจะดูไกลตัวหรือว่าเราไม่แน่ใจว่าเราสามารถจะไปเปลี่ยนแปลงควบคุมมันได้ไหมเอาแค่ตัวเราเองก่อน what do we do if we okay let's say we all agree that lifelong learning is important how do we start today
Okay, I feel like this is a very good question because most of the time when we talk about education, there often comes another word, problem, you know. And when it comes problem, most of the time people tend to find someone to blame.
Yeah.
And I feel like we should stop the blame game entirely because it's not everyone's game. I feel very much, I have a very high empathy for teachers these days because, you know, they have so much KPIs that they have to follow. They have students to care for, you know.
a lot of reports to write,
yes.
right?
And like if you were in their shoes, you understand that there's a lot of limitations of what he or she could do, you know, the teachers. And I really admire the work that they are doing these days, you know.
Of course, yeah.
So back to the question, like, so what can we start? What can we start doing for ourselves if the situation or if the system is not yet what we aim for, you know, it's not the ideal system that we really wish it would be in our country. For me personally, I feel like lifelong learning is somehow one of the answers. I say one of the answers because it comes back to yourself is to, you know, ignite that passion, that joy of learning back to yourself. And
joy of learning, that's another topic.
And to really think about it, I feel like humans are very curious by nature, you know. We are curious creatures, you know. I mean, we go out there and then we question this and that, like why this happens. But when we become adults, we lose such curiosity in life, you know.
We also are a lazy creature, and we also are the creature of habits. So if we don't start good habits to follow, it's very likely that we can just lie around all day and doing nothing. Even though we're still curious, but we're not doing anything about it, right?
Yeah, but this is a very important part because but if you check with yourself, I really believe that there must be something that intrigues you. There must be something that, you know, to use the word spark joy from
คอนโดมาเรียนนั้นเฮ้ยเรื่องเรียนก็สปาร์กจอยได้นะไม่ใช่เรื่องเก็บบ้านอย่างเดียวเนาะใช่ไหม
Yes. I believe that there must be some book or some song, some movie that really ignite your thought, you know, that
คำนี้
makes
ดี
you
นะ
question.
ignite เนี่ยมันแบบจุดประกายใช่ไหมครับ
Yes, it's like เหมือนไม้ขีดไฟมันแบบเฮ้ย what is this all about, you know, and follow that. Like whenever you have this curiosity, just follow through. Like what about it that makes you feel like, hey, this is interesting.
And I want to know more about this.
Yeah.
Right? And is that how you find your joy of learning?
I don't know. I feel like I have a lot of questions in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe this is my problem as well because I have so many questions and so many curiosity that I want to follow through.
Blessing and curse.
But it makes life fun, you know, because it feels like you see the world for the first time almost every time you see it. Like don't ever make anyone stop you feel that way, you know. As I told you, I often look at my niece and you'll be surprised how, you know, a girl or a kid, they look at the world as if they see it for the first time. Like whatever they see, they will like always have this surprising and sparkling in the eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we make that our character or habits even?
As I say, I don't want to use the word, that you have to be a lifelong learner. I don't want to force anyone to be anything, But as I say, just listen to yourself, like what ignites you, what sparks your joy, what makes you curious at the moment, and try to follow that, Never lose the voice in your head, Let's say that previously I was in the middle of writing one book, right, one big project, and then I was like, okay, how do I make a person's story becomes a universal story, because the author often feels like, this is my story, like who will be interested in this story, So this might be like just my own question, but actually it's a question that you can just, go so far as to how to communicate better. If you know what I mean, like it can go so far as to how you develop storytelling skill, and it comes just from one question when you are stuck with your project, just follow from that. Don't look at it as something that this is a challenge in life or this is difficult, but follow it. What is the essence of it? What can you learn from this question that you have in your mind? Yeah.
So do not underestimate the importance of small joy and small and personal joy.
Or even challenge.
Because
challenge can be a joy as well.
Yeah, it could be something very universal if you know how to tell your stories. And it could be something that you can follow. Because I also am the one who really believes that passion is something that you create, not born with. หลายๆคนมีปัญหานี้เราคุยกันเรื่องนี้บ่อยมากว่าทำยังไงผมไม่มี passion เพราะเขาคิดว่าเกิดมามันต้องมีเลยซึ่งจริงๆเปล่านะมันคือ something that you have to develop, right?
Yes, and I feel like this is a problem with the term find your passion, because by
ใช้
saying
verb ผิดเนาะ
the verb is wrong. By saying you have to find your passion or find yourself is as if there's something at the end of the pipeline that you can find.
It already exists.
Yeah.
You just have to find it.
But
that located.
Actually, it's discovering, and it might change every time. You might discover one passion, and then you discover another passion, and that is okay. You might discover that one day you are this identity, and another day you are not. This is evolving, and this is again back to lifelong learning, because learning is the creation of self. How yourself is evolving every day.
ก็ต้องมองให้เห็นว่าเราสามารถออกแบบการเรียนรู้อย่างที่เราอยากจะทำได้มองให้เห็นว่าเราเป็นคนที่สามารถจะเปลี่ยนแปลงและพัฒนาไปได้เรื่อยๆสิ่งที่เราเจอในวันนี้พรุ่งนี้อาจจะไม่ใช่สิ่งที่เรายังไม่เจอในวันนี้พรุ่งนี้อาจจะเจอก็ได้เพราะฉะนั้นถ้าสมมติเกิดเราอย่างน้อยมีพื้นฐานความคิดแบบนี้ก่อนเนี่ย lifelong learning มันก็จะสามารถเกิดขึ้นได้อย่างเป็นธรรมชาติ
Talking about this, the creation of self, that's one German word that I really like. Sorry for all the German friends because I don't know how to pronounce this word. It's Bildung, which is the creation of self, and it's often used as education in Germany. But the meaning is totally different. It doesn't mean the providing of curriculum, of systematic curriculum per se, but it means the creation of self. So Bildung.Education in German means the process of how a person create his or herself. And I feel like, wow, that is actually education that I long for, something that helps me create myself or discover myself every day. And it also implies that you can become more than who you are at the moment. You are not your static self.But by having education or by constantly learning, you can becoming another version of yourself. Whether or not it's better or worse, that's for you to decide, But you are becoming something along the process.
ฟังแล้วน่าสนุกกว่ากันเยอะเลยกับการ because it's not about memorizing stuff or memorizing like what year World War II started and something like that.
Yeah.
There's no like exams and scoring and getting good grades.
Yeah, but even for World War, I feel like this topic when I was in secondary school and when I had to study about World War, and most of the time the teachers would just talk about when it started, who died, stuff like that, and you have to memorize. But when I was in college and then you start to learn more about World War II, I feel like, wow, this is such a significant event in our world, you know, and if you, again, start with why, like why is this event so crucially important for our generation as well, not only for those who, you know, had their families die in war, because I feel like it still has an impact on us until these days, you know, so if you understand why we have to study about World War or any other historical background, then you would have so much joy learning it.
Yeah, going back to the word that you used before, curious. If you're curious and you learn how to ask the right question or ask interesting different questions นอกเหนือจากปีไหนใครตายอย่างที่บอกเนาะ because
มัน
you're
คล้องกันเนาะปีไหน
ปีไหนแล้วใครตาย because you're approaching this as a story as a lesson and as an impact เมื่อกี้อิมพูดถึงว่าเมื่อเราศึกษาสงครามโลกครั้งที่2ในแง่ที่ว่าเรื่องราวมันเป็นยังไง
ใช่
แล้วก็มันส่งผลกระทบอย่างไรอะไรเงี้ยมันต่างไปจากการมันเหมือนกับเราดูหนังอะเนาะเราไม่ได้มานั่งท่องปีคศอย่างเดียวแล้วอะ
มันมีบทเรียนมหาศาลอยู่ในนั้นที่มันยังเกี่ยวข้องคำว่าเกี่ยวข้องก็เป็นคำที่สำคัญยังเกี่ยวข้องกับเราในวันนี้ I feel like relevance orเกี่ยวข้อง is something that makes learning last you know because you know that it matters to us it matters to my life you know
how it has anything to do with my life right now
let's say like ลูกเสือเนตรนารี back to that example you know like just for ลูกเสือเนตรนารี I was like what is this has to do with my life but if you talk about diversity or teamwork of course
it's
this
still
makes so much
relevant
sense
ใช่อ๋อมันคือวิธีการ well how you call it how you advertise it I thinkถ้าสมมุติเกิดในวันนี้เรายังอยากให้มีลูกเสือเนตรนารีแต่เรา advertise it differently or we kind of like เขาเรียกอะไรนะ rebuild มันขึ้นมาหรือว่า remake มันขึ้นมาแบบว่า
actually you know what summer camp in the US most of the time is very much similar to ลูกเสือเนตรนารี
จริงครับ
you know so it's like
But
going
you know
as a team
ลูกเสือเนตรนารี and summer camp you know summer camp is something that I want to go to แต่ว่าไม่ใช่ลูกเสือเนตรนารีที่เราจะต้องแบบสมมติอาจจะต้องมาร้องเพลงที่เราไม่รู้สึกอินแล้วหรือว่า
But campfire is actually fun you know
I enjoy the hike also แบบเขาเรียกอะไรเดินทางไกลใช่ไหมแล้วต้องมีไม้งามต่างๆ
ใช่
เฮ้ยมันสนุกดีนะ
อิมยังเคยต้องเดินเอาไม้งามไปเดินแถวบางกะปิอ่ะ
จริงดิ
เพราะว่าอยู่โรงเรียนแถวนั้นแล้วก็ต้องเดินไม้งามไปตามบ้านแต่ตอนนั้นมันไม่รู้ไงว่าเราจะเดินไม้งามไปทำไม
จริงมันมีบางอย่างที่เรางงๆว่า
ทำไปทำไมใช่
แต่ว่าบางอย่างถ้าสมมติเกิดเก็ตก็เก็ตแต่ถ้าเกิดไม่เก็ตไม่มีแมคานิกอะไรมาทำให้คนเก็ตนะ
ไม่อธิบายเด็กๆหรือผู้เรียนว่าแบบเฮ้ยอันนี้มันเกี่ยวข้องกับ survival skills นะมันคือการฝึกความอดทนนะโอ้ถ้าบอกตั้งแต่ตอนนั้นเราจะแบบ
มันจะว้าวเนอะ
ว้าววิชาสำคัญนะเนี่ย
ใช่แบบโอเคเหมือนกับที่เมื่อกี้ที่ฟังอิมบอกว่าเฮ้ยมันเกี่ยวข้องกับ diversity I never thought of it that way before I have to admit but yeah it's right there but I didn't see it
it teaches such lessons
wow okay that's very good
ขอบคุณค่ะ
lifelong learning เนาะมันเป็นสิ่งที่มันสนุกกว่าที่มัน actually like a lot more fun than how it sounds
it's fun it's my favorite topic
yeah and actually you have been working on like the lifelong learning stuff did you have the project or you went to school and studied this
actually I did my thesis on this
oh yeah
that's a long story about this like a lot of people usually ask me why did my thesis on lifelong learning back when it was not a popular term and I have to give credit to my advisor as well and also to my friends because before I decided on the thesis topic I conducted a poll a very informal poll on Facebook like you know like there are 3 topics that I had in mind and which one would serve the most benefit you know because I don't want to just do thesis that serve my own interest so I just throw this question to my friends but actually lifelong learning came as the second on the list another one I don't remember anymore what it's about I think it's about active learning or stuff you know
what was the first
I think it's active learning like something to do with hard skills or stuff like that I don't quite remember but I went for this one because I knew that you know I didn't plan to have my career in formal education, I didn't plan to be a teacher, but I plan to do something with, I don't know, I had this idea in mind about learning culture and such, and I had this term in my head that I didn't know how to quite translate, and then you have to conduct literature review and such, and this word came up, and I feel like, wow, actually there are many countries who are leading in translating this term into actions, and I want to know how we can apply this term to the context of Thai society. It was such a big idea
right.
at first, but then it took me so far.
So if you have to summarize your thesis or doing your thesis, what was the key message or the key lesson that you learned, and what's your thesis was all about?
Okay. Actually, my thesis was conducted in Singapore. I chose Singapore because there was not a lot of cases from Southeast Asia. And so I want to demonstrate that, there's a case from our region as well, because most of the time is those in Scandinavian or in Europe. But so I conducted in Singapore, and the finding was quite interesting because not most of the time, in Singapore, this term was pretty much related to human capital and economic development. As I told you about my friend, who felt that she was forced to have to constantly reskill and upskill
Another sexy words
and learn for the rest of her
nowadays.
life because the state would not provide you with jobs if you are not catch up with the world enough. So basically, especially in the aging society of Singapore, they wish that their citizens would be able to catch up with the pace of the world. So no matter how old you are, you have to be able to learn by yourself,
ต้อง unskill reskill อะไรกันตลอดเวลา
so that's very much related to economic development. And the interesting part was that before I conducted this thesis, I had a very, how do you say, I look up as Singapore as a very high example. And then, but then, when I wrote a thesis and then I submitted to my advisor, he said that, you have to criticize about it a little bit. It's not like you have to just, oh, this is great, this is good, Singapore is awesome, like what is the critical point about it that you would recommend for other people, for other countries, or for your own country to learn from it. And I got a lot from talking to my friends and people who participate in the thesis that they wish lifelong learning would be voluntary. That lifelong learning would coming out of people's will. And if people have the urge to learn, if you want to learn this subject, or let's say that if I become 50 years old and I want to learn how to become a YouTuber, I have to be able to have the choice to learn. This is how the state intervene, but it's not like the state jumps before and tells that, you have to learn how to make YouTube or you have to learn how to do social media because it's a crucial skill for us to develop our economic. But it goes the other hand, like people have to choose first and then state has to be the one who provide.
Exactly.
And actually Singapore is doing a great job on that, and I feel like it's a very great example because they have one thing that is called a skills future. Basically, they provide skills for citizens to be able to just use token, for different companies. Let's say that if I want to learn something from Kamnidi, and Kamnidi is being subsidized by the state, and I can use the credit that the government provide for me and learn how to do, this fancy studio, how to conduct podcasts from Kamnidi or from the standard. And this is like an ecosystem, for everyone to be a part of learning culture. So it's a great example, and that's still something that can be improved in the case of Singapore. I feel like I'm talking about my thesis.
This is so cool because we have no insight about what the Singapore education system is all about from people who are right there, because but we heard about the greatness of their education system all the time, but we want to see that, like, the different side too, that okay, so there's something still that they're not getting right but they're improving right
Yeah, improving, but people are very stressful, you know, like my friends in Singapore, they are like very hardworking people, and that's something I wouldn't say that it's something that to be improved because it's, you know, their country.
right
You know, I will leave it for them to decide, but if it's coming out of people's will, you know, and then they have the choice, I think that would be even better because it will help with the well-being of people as well, because what's the point of economic development if people are not feeling well,
right
you know. Yeah.
so do you see any kind of improvement that can actually happen in Thai society or Thai educational system
That's a lot, and I feel like I have a very high hope that is happening right now, especially for the private sector. I feel like private sector is doing a great job on this, you know. Even community or podcast or what the standard is doing right now, like providing all the knowledge, you know, edutainment content for the public. You know, this is something that, you know, people our age, you know, I am 30 already and I'm still learning a lot from podcasts. That is something that is contributing to the learning culture, to the learning society as well, without having to wait for the state or, you know, having this blame game that, okay, you know, the state, you have to be the one who provide this, like,
there's no
whatever.
one version of dream school I think right
Yes, like, if you are ready, then you can provide it. And yeah, if you ask me, like, what can be improved, I feel like there's still a lot of gap that we can collaborate more. Right now, it's like one person or one company doing this and that, you know, but I feel like everyone has this vision in mind that we know that we want the Thai society to develop, and we know that by developing ourselves, like making ourselves better every day, is also contributing for the better goods of the society as well. But it's like right now everyone is doing their own parts, you know. But I really wish that there would be some kind of collaboration that makes this such an ecosystem as Singapore is doing with Skills Future. You know, there must be some mechanic in place in order for the collaboration to really happen.
wow
I really wish.
yeah but one thing that I get from this is that like I said there's no one version of dream school or dream university, so we don't actually have to wait for that to happen. We can just create it from our you know, like small corner of our house.
Yeah.
Like community is trying to do because we don't think of ourselves as like educator from the beginning. I just do what I love.
Yeah.
But it can grow from what you love, the small joy, like you said before.
Yeah.
Like, and then it can grow. And who knows where this is can, you know, get even bigger and having more impact to broader audience. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of fun. You don't even have to be at the receiving end of the self-learning or lifelong learning. At the same time, you can be the giving end also, right? You give and you receive all the time at the same time. ไม่เหมือนกับความคิดที่ว่าเราต้องเก่งให้สุดก่อนเราค่อยเริ่มเป็นคนที่แบบให้ความรู้คนอื่น But you can do that like whenever.
I really agree, and I feel like this is not an either or question, you know, like most of the time when people ask like, should you start with the society first or should you start with yourself first? I feel like this has to go hand in hand, you know, it has to go simultaneously, you know. It doesn't mean that by working on yourself you neglect the society, and it doesn't mean that because you work for the society you have to neglect yourself. It has to go at the same time, you know, becauseเพราะคนชอบเข้าใจผิดว่าถ้าพูดถึงเรื่องพัฒนาตนเองมันคือเราแบบปฏิเสธสังคม
ละเลยส่วนรวม
ไม่จริงๆอิมว่าอันนั้นคือมันเป็น long term game เรื่องของโครงสร้างเรื่องอะไรต่างๆ It's something that you have to work in the long run, but what you can do right now is starting from yourself by knowing full well in mind that there is the structure that limits you or limits the society from not reaching its full potential. Yeah. So it's like it doesn't mean that you have to choose either or, but it has to go all together.
Yeah. You can have them all. You can do both.
You have to do both.
You have to do both.
Yeah. And I feel like you are doing both at the same time if you are conscious of the problem of what is happening. Yeah.
แล้วอีกอันหนึ่งที่รู้สึกว่าน่าจะสำคัญมากสำหรับเรื่อง lifelong learning ที่เรียนรู้ด้วยตัวเองก็คือว่าคุณไม่จำเป็นจะต้องเห็นภาพที่ชัดเจนที่สุดก่อน but you can just start something today just start learning something or just start giving out information or knowledge or whatever today and see how it goes เพราะหลายๆคนมันเราจะมีภาพของความเป็นระบบการศึกษาหลักสูตรที่ well thought out คิดมาแล้ว proof แล้วว่า work ต่างๆเราค่อยมาเริ่มเรียนสอนกันแต่จริงๆปัจจุบันนี้มันไม่ใช่อย่างนั้นอีกแล้วเนาะ
Yeah, I feel like we are in the middle of the creation of future as well. We're talking about the creation of self, and during this time, I feel like it's a very interesting time that we are in the process of making. So whatever future that we have in mind, the big vision that you have in mind, you are in the process of creating it. So yeah, and futures can be multiples. There can be multiple futures in the future.
right multiverse เหรอ ใครจะไปรู้
Yeah, so you never know, but just starting with what spark your joy at the moment, because that will keep you doing far. Yeah.
เยี่ยมไปเลย